Wingardium Leviosa. Stop.
Yes, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, a franchise that has been spanning since the 90s that has made stars and pop culture icons overnight. To making J.K. Rowling a multi-billionaire thanks to the succession of these books and movies and turning into a franchise that ain't slowing down. With 7 books, 8 movies, multiple spin-offs, toys and video games, there is no denying that Harry Potter is a staple in pop culture. Well, hello Amora everybody, and welcome to this new video series. Now, while I like to tackle and talk about the books, but let's face it, they've probably been talked to death on the YouTube algorithm, but today I figured, well, since there's a new TV series coming out, why don't we tackle the movies that have been part of mine, if not your childhood, since 2001. Anyway, with that being said, I'm Azza the Pop Culture Viking, and today we're going to be looking into the Harry Potter film series, starting with The Philosopher's Stone. Now, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like and share, and also don't forget to hit that notification button for more videos like this. Okay, so let's go back to the 90s. Basically, J.K. Rowling released her first ever book in 1997, which became the New York Times best-selling book of the time, selling over 120 million copies and being translated into 37 other languages, including Latin, which I'm sure makes the book harder to read, I guess. However, eventually in 1999, just when the third book came out, J.K. Rowling reportedly sold the filming rights for about £1 million, and along with her having the final saying in what can and cannot go into the movies, this is when the filming began production in the early 2000s. And with the help of Warner Brothers Studios, the film was on its way. But the question was, who was going to direct the film? Well, Warner Brothers did consider Steven Spielberg, so that would have been a slam dunk, right?
Pitt says no.
See, when Steven Spielberg was approached to be the director of the first Harry Potter film, he actually had some creative differences between himself and J.K. Rowling. It has been reported that Spielberg actually wanted to make it an animated feature film and to have Haley Joel Osment voice Harry Potter. Kind of similar vibe to the Lord of the Rings animated film.
Consult with the wizard Arrowman, the head of my order. Be careful, Frodo.
But however, while there has been some back and forth between the production companies and J.K. Rowling, Spielberg decided to actually decline the offer. Reasons are a bit mixed, but sources say that he thought that the movie was going to be too easy for him and decided to make the movie AI, artificial intelligence, instead. Now, that would have been a solid choice, but that movie only made around 230 million, where Harry Potter made a lot more. Now with Steven Spielberg out of the picture, there was the struggle to find a director to make the film. Now they did have a list of people in mind like Wolfgang Petersen, Ivan Reitman, M. Night Shyamalan, Mike Newell, who ended up directing the fourth movie The Goblet of Fire anyway, but the job did eventually go to Chris Columbus. That's right, the man who famously sailed across the world to discover America. Oh, sorry, wrong person. The famous 90s director who made the famous movies like Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire. Okay, now that production was on the way, the question was, who was going to be playing the trio of Harry, Ron and Hermione? Well, Chris Columbus and the producers went to hundreds of schools in England to find the 3 main characters, but it did have to be an all-British cast, as Rowling insisted as part of the agreement, with the exception of Irish and Scottish actors and actresses involved in the Harry Potter films. Well, after going through the audition process, they managed to get Emma Watson as Hermione and Rupert Grint as Ron pretty easily, even though Ron rapped in his audition for some reason. Geez, I wonder how he'll go rap battling Eminem. Maybe Slim Shady could have fitted into Gryffindor.
Look suspicious, it's all dudes in here, except for these bitches.
Now, Tom Felton did originally audition for Harry and Ron, but Chris asked if he could audition for Draco Malfoy instead, and Chris decided that he was best to play Draco, which was probably one less casting headache for Chris Columbus to worry about. But that leads to one problem. Who was playing Harry Potter? Well, after going through hundreds, if not thousands of kids through schools and auditions, the production and Chris Columbus finally found Daniel Radcliffe as their Harry Potter. Now, Daniel Radcliffe did have experience in acting, as he did appear in his acting debut in the BBC 2-part adaptation of Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. So Harry Potter did definitely skyrocket Daniel Radcliffe into stardom, along with Emma Watson and Rupert Grint. Now that we had our main trio of Harry, Ron and Hermione casted, there was just one more thing left. We can't forget about the teachers too. Well, to be fair, it wasn't as hard as it was with the children to cast. Firstly, Robin Williams was actually interested in participating in the film, but was turned down due to the all-British cast rule, and Tim Roth was actually approached as the first choice for Severus Snape, but he had to turn it down as he was about to film Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. But J.K. Rowling approved of the remaining choices for the teachers. J.K. Rowling loved the choices of legendary British stars Maggie Smith as Professor McGonagall and Robbie Coltrane as the beloved Hagrid. And with Alan Rickman as Severus Snape and Richard Harris as Professor Dumbledore as the final choices in the casting of the teachers. Which, fun fact, Richard Harris actually didn't want to play Dumbledore, but his granddaughter threatened to never speak to him again unless if he played Professor Dumbledore because his granddaughter was a huge fan of the books. And with principal photography starting in the 2000s and with a release date on the 4th of November 2001, Harry Potter was brought to the big screen. But how did it do when it came to making the movie as accurate to the book as possible? Well, just like every other book adaptation, things would have to get the cutting board. Like for example, well, first they changed the name from Philosopher's Stone to Sorcerer's Stone for the Americans because the producers thought that the US audience could not pronounce philosophers correctly. There are actually two different versions of the movie where the name Philosopher's is dubbed over to Sorcerer's Stone. Honestly, it's not that hard to say Philosopher's Stone. First difference is that in the book it does start us off in the Muggle world, where in the movie it just smack bangs us straight with the witches and wizards in the Wizarding world. A couple of chapters do get adapted or get changed around, like the Midnight Duel chapter and the whole dragon plot halfway through the book and the movie get changed for the film. Even characters get changed, get cut, and appear in films but then disappear later in the series, like Peeves the Poltergeist, who just straight up doesn't exist in the film. Like, they even cast and shot scenes with comedy actor Rick Mailer as Peeves the Poltergeist, and they just completely cut him from the movie. But apart from those changes, how did the overall movie turn out from the final product that we got? Well, let's look at the pros and cons of the movie that was eventually released. We'll start with the cons. Firstly, we do notice that the acting from the kids is not that great, but we do give them a pass as it is their first major, let alone their first ever movie, but they do get better throughout the series. Some of the CGI is definitely a mixed bag. While the practical effects are just flawless and wonderful, the CGI is a bit rough at times. Like for example, the Quidditch match, which Chris Columbus has said he wasn't happy with and wish he had more time to make it look better. And for it being a 20+ year movie, it does show its age. And thanks to the movies like Jurassic Park back in 1993, movies nowadays do rely on CGI to make scenes come to life that you just can't do with practical effects these days. But what about the pros, however? Well, first, that John Williams score for the movie is just chef's kiss, and is so iconic now that the minute you hear that chime kick in, you know it's Harry Potter. The teachers are definitely the highlight of the movie, with the actors and actresses bringing McGonagall, Hagrid, Snape, who's my personal favourite performance by the way, and Dumbledore to life, especially since these characters are very important to the story and Harry's journey from being an 11-year-old first year to the brave man that he grows up to be to defeat Lord Voldemort. And speaking of Voldemort, the story being told about Harry discovering that he is a wizard in a magical world who has become famous for defeating a mysterious dark wizard with a mystery discovering a magical item known as the Philosopher's Stone and gets to learn magic at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Just that story alone gives us a great introduction as a viewer to the magical world that builds upon itself and does a great job bringing us back to important moments that doesn't feel important in the previous movies. Like for example, the twist that Professor Quirrell was the bad guy the whole time and he had Voldemort on the back of his head in a frail and weakened state, and we don't see proper Lord Voldemort until the 4th film in the series. And even after the film's release, there is an extended cut of the Philosopher's Stone which adds a lot more detail by adding in the deleted scenes from the film, which does add a lot more details and makes more sense with some scenes after watching the extended cut. And don't at me with spoilers, you had plenty of chances. But what did Harry Potter fans and moviegoers thought of the actual movie itself? Well, fans and critics alike definitely agree that it's definitely a solid Harry Potter movie with a pretty solid score of 81 to 82% on Rotten Tomatoes from both fans and critics. And you can see why. It's a great introduction to the magical world that all fans wish were a part of. Drawing in kids and teens who grew up and read the famous books now can watch their favourite characters on the big screen. With the performances from certain characters, the score, story, and world building, there is no denying that Harry Potter has touched the hearts of many kids and teens alike and is still doing the same thing for the next generations to come. But before we wrap up this video, how do they do with the box office and the marketing and merchandise of the Harry Potter movie? Well, they pretty much made all the money in 2001. That's right, coming off a $125 million budget, the movie grossed over $1.25 billion at the box office. VHS and DVD sales would end up selling 10 million copies and would break video rental records. Remember those? By bringing in $19.1 million, surpassing the Fast and the Furious and the Bourne Identity in DVD and VHS rentals. Even merchandise brought in the big bucks too, from action figures, potion making and wand practicing sets, sweets and chocolates, and even the books had a resurgence in sales after the film's release. Even Lego hopped on the Harry Potter train, releasing multiple Lego sets of our favourite scenes and characters, making Harry Potter the second ever movie franchise license to have a deal with Lego. The first one obviously being Star Wars. And let's not forget the multiple releases of video games which had been regarded as fun adventure games and have been called as one of the best movie-based video games of all time. Even to this day, we are getting Harry Potter games like Lego Harry Potter and Hogwarts Legacy. So it was definitely clear that Harry Potter was not slowing down, whether if you had a lunchbox, replica wand, or the VHS or DVD that you owned, which you definitely set your TV unit on fire over playing it. The Harry Potter hype train was definitely full steam ahead, which was preparing for its next installment in 1 year's time. Well, that's all for today, guys, but let me know your thoughts on the first Harry Potter movie. Don't forget to comment down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification button if you want more videos like that. Until then, I'm Azza the Pop Culture Viking, and love pop culture, and don't forget to smile.
Miss Hoover, the movie's over.
Down in front!